I need some traction.
It's good to meet you all. Thank you for having me. I always love coming to Canada. I was just in Ottawa a couple weeks ago, keynoting at the Invest Ottawa conference, and I had a great time there as well. And I actually caught good weather for once, so that was good. Apologize for being late. You should too. Just kidding. Come on, sit down. I had a misunderstanding. I thought it was 2:30. It was 12:30. Anyway, apparently I'm at 2:30 again too, so we'll just do this twice, which is great. My name is Sheppard. I'm one of the co-founders of GrowthX Academy, our market development accelerator. Our thesis is that in today's market, we'll cover this stuff in a minute, but in today's market, it's easier to start a company than it is to grow a company. In the age of applied technology, I can get a product to market much faster than I can get anybody to buy it. 70% of startups fail. Funded startups fail for the same reasons, market and people-related reasons, yet people remain very focused on their products. And we want to shift that mentality and that mindset to market development over product development. Not to say that product development isn't important. It is, and it will continue to be. But coding will be the new factory job. And that's the reality. Those that know how to develop markets will be the new rare commodity. So it's completely shifting from what it has been in the past. And as investors, we're taking the same amount of money and we're giving it to more companies, less money to more companies, and saying, let's see what you can do with it. Let's see if you can execute. So a little bit about us. What we'll talk about today is our proprietary market acceleration program, which is the best and fastest and most efficient way for you to get to the truth about where your product fits in a market. And we'll talk about that. What a market milestone looks like, who your customers are, where are they, how do you find them, how do you talk to them in a way that gets them interested in giving you feedback, and the role of that early market developer in your organization, how you measure them, how you think about them. A little bit about the GrowthX family. We have a family of companies that starts with our seed stage venture capital fund, which is focused on early stage companies with early customers, early revenue, early traction with a clear path to product market fit, who typically have a big market opportunity but don't have a really strong idea or background in how to get there. We also have an academy that's designed to train the talent that wants to work in non-tech roles in startups. If universities did this, we wouldn't have to, but since they don't, we're doing it. It's a full 12-week immersion program focused on UX and design is one track, growth marketing is another, sales and business development is another, the areas that move the needle in the market development side of your business. It's 12 weeks long, it's fully immersive, it's in person in San Francisco, and you can also do it live, interactive from anywhere in the world and participate in the classroom sessions through a live stream. We also have our corporate innovation team that works with big companies that want to have relationships with startups and don't want to be the next yellow cab in the age of Uber. We have GrowthX Gives, which is our nonprofit arm that shows disadvantaged youth entrepreneurship as a career path. And then, of course, GrowthX Capital, as I mentioned. So that's the family. It's what we call an ecosystem. We think that's what's necessary in today's marketplace to help support entrepreneurship and innovation in any community or market. We've launched it in San Francisco. We now have offices in Dallas, Phoenix, Nashville. We'll be announcing a partnership with the Malaysian government, their prime minister, and their top entrepreneur to bring the entire system to them in August. And we've got about 12 to 16 other markets that we're talking to right now. Because as founders and entrepreneurs, you shouldn't have to leave your hometown, come to the most expensive city in the world, to be close to capitalists like me when you can be home next to your family and your customer base. But why not have your slice of what the Valley does well and bring it to your hometown? And that's the objective of what we've done. So why did we do it? As I mentioned, the data shows, CB Insights does the best job of tracking this data. 70% of funded startups fail. 8 of the top 10 reasons are markets and people. 6 are market, 2 are people. Only 20% of the reasons these companies fail have anything to do with product inefficiencies or lack of product execution. So again, many of them remain founder focused or product focused. And this is my team. Will Bunker is my founder, started a little dating website called Match.com. I've started 5 companies in a wide variety of product markets and verticals as a selling and marketing founder. I've sold 3. Andrew Goldner, my partner, was the chief technology counsel at DoubleClick, sold him into Google, bought Reuters and ran that for 9 years. Max Makey is one of my partners who I trained personally, like Josh Fector, who was here before you. It's great to see Josh. come up here when I feel like one day I'm going to say, I knew you when. But we discovered him and hired him and helped him grow his brand and the GrowthX brand, so I'm super proud of him. We've got a team of accomplished individuals across faculty, staff, market acceleration, working alongside companies and the people that want to grow them. We have an approach that's philosophically around mindset, mastery, career, and community, getting people into a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset, embracing feedback, removing rejection from our lives, the idea that every area of my life and my work is available for development and growth. Mastery, starting with knowledge, competency, proficiency, and ultimately mastery. You can put yourself on a path and with deliberate intent and practice, master anything over time, regardless of what you were born with or not born with from an inborn talent standpoint. Developing your career and then leveraging the community. We've got hundreds of mentors across the globe that have all been successful entrepreneurs and practice leaders in market development that help develop people, hire them, refer people in, source them and give wisdom and feedback, and constantly help us develop educational programming to help startups and ecosystems develop and grow. I talked about the programs, blah, blah, blah. Let's get right into MXP. So, the age of applied technology. The first time I raised money, I raised $8.5 million from Guy Kawasaki and Garage Ventures 18 years ago to build a minimum viable product. It was just an idea. I could build that same product today for about $200,000 because all the infrastructure exists now. Back then I had to build a data center. Today I can build a 1U box and intelligently route traffic across different IP lanes. That's the world we live in now. Now, there's always going to be developed technology, deep science, and that's important. But the reality is 80% of the things that come to market are easily copied, are very hard to defend. So the age of market execution as opposed to product execution is upon us. So the risk is in, if I build something to solve a problem for you, are there more people like you? And if so, where are they? How do I find them? How do I talk to them in a way that gets the feedback I need to learn about whether or not I can help them and grow and continue to develop a product and learn from that product? And from an investment perspective, the rules have changed there as well. People used to invest in ideas, as I mentioned, long before they even got to market. But today, traction speaks louder than words. Show me you have real customers. Show me people are willing to pay for what you do. Best place to raise money anyway is from your customers. They don't want equity. They don't want a board seat. They're not calling you every quarter asking you how things are doing. They just want to know that you're serving them. So the old A round requirements are now seed round requirements. So it's now more important than it's ever been to get traction early and validate your ideas. So as I mentioned before, our Accelerator program is bespoke. It's for companies that we invest in. Once they're in the fund, they can apply, and if the conditions are right, we help them develop markets and raise revenue, not develop product and raise money. All the accelerators and incubators are great and they should exist, but they all have a different role and purpose than the one that we have, which is trying to move the needle on that 70% failure rate between seed and A or seed and break even. So through the course of that, we've developed over time, working with hundreds of startups in a wide variety of products, markets, and verticals, and me doing this stuff for 20 years across a wide variety of products, markets, and verticals, a foolproof path to finding product market fit, if it exists. The whole idea is it may not. The ultimate metric for all of you should be the truth, whatever that truth is. How you react to that truth, how you respond to that truth is entirely up to you. That's where the growth mindset comes in. Feedback is a gift. I'm here to learn. You know, I'm not a know-it-all, I'm a learn-it-all. And that's our approach. So ours unfolds under 4 key areas, phases as we call them, and across 3 different milestones. And the way our business model works is we borrow money from our LPs in our fund to pay a team of market development experts to work alongside your company in exchange for additional equity at a rate that's at least $2 in equity for every $1 in cash that we invest. And so as a result, we have a responsibility, a fiduciary one, to measure deliverables from a traction perspective, not a revenue standpoint. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is creating forecasts and quotas when you don't have a past. Predicting a future is pretty much impossible, so it's, for the most part, bullshit. So there has to be a way to track progress, and there has to be a way to do it from a perspective that is meaningful. And so we call those traction milestones. And it starts with market discovery, outreach, messaging, outreach, and results. We have 3 milestones: foundation, development, and scale. This is going to be fun. Okay. I don't like standing behind a podium. I'm a pacer. So recognizing this and understanding that products and markets are unique, but the path to product market fit is not, we take every company that we work with through this process. And why am I here? Because I think everybody, you don't have to come to our academy. You don't need to ask us for money. We don't need to help you either in corporate innovation or as a startup. But this methodology works. It works to get you to the truth. And that truth is your truth. It's not mine. The outcomes are yours. They're not mine. But if you follow it and you take a very intentional rote approach towards each step in this methodology, you will get to the truth faster than you otherwise could yourself, I promise you. So here's how it unfolds. It starts with that mindset that we talked about, very simple scientific method approach. You know, we construct a hypothesis. We don't assume anything. Assumptions are very different than hypotheses. My dad taught me not to assume anything except responsibility for my own behavior. I'm still struggling with that. But when you construct a hypothesis and you start down the road of, I hypothesize this, it's a very different approach, isn't it? Your mind's in a different place than as if it was, I'm making this assumption about a market, or I'm just moving forward with founder bias, which is also very dangerous. You want to believe that what you're doing is right. You want to believe that you're solving a problem. You want to believe that you can make, $100 million bucks or whatever you want to do. But the truth lies somewhere outside of your bias, and that's what you have to focus on. So we take this very rote, very specific and repetitive approach of lean, hypothesizing, testing, learning, experimenting, iterating, and going from there. And it unfolds in phase 1 as resource review, market discovery, messaging, and instrumentation. Then we go into market development. We'll go through this in pretty grave detail. The first thing we have any company do is fill out what we call a market readiness assessment. A market readiness assessment tells us what your current state is, where are you with regards to the market, how many customers do you have, how much are they paying, what are they doing, how'd they find you, how'd you find them, are they affiliated customers? In other words, are they your friends or are they strangers? I value strangers over friends every day. If you can get somebody who's a stranger to buy your product early, then that tells me a lot more than if somebody's doing you a favor. So you'll fill out this document, you'll go through it, and it'll talk to you about, it'll help you think about framing up, am I ready for scale? Am I ready for market acceleration? And this applies, by the way, with any new product. I know we talk about this from the perspective of startups, but a startup is just a new product. So any product at any stage in any company can apply this. That's why we have a corporate innovation team that teaches big companies the same process to help them figure out commercialization for new products. So the first question we ask before we start this process is, what's your next market milestone? Because everything that we do has to have a quantifiable outcome based on what we think we want that objective outcome to be, or that objective to be. And that might take the form of, it has to be quantifiable. It might take the form of X number of customers, X amount of revenue, X amount of pilots that are validated. There's a whole host of different ways of doing this. And we find tremendous misalignment with this from day one. A great anecdotal story is we had a company that had 8 pilots. They had a 2-person sales team, and they wanted their first quarter goal to be to acquire 60 new customers. And so what we did is we reverse engineered the funnel. We looked at, from the bottom up, which is what we always do, how many wins do you need? How many real qualified opportunities do you need? How many conversations do you have to have with humans to qualify those opportunities? How many do you have to reach out to begin with in order to get to that point? So you reverse engineer the funnel from the bottom up. And these guys realized that their goal of 60 in the first quarter would have required them to have some 1,500 conversations in like 10 weeks, and there was 2 of them. So it wasn't realistic. So we reset their expectation. We got them down to 12 deals for that quarter. They went back to their investors, set that expectation. They got 14 deals. Everybody's happy. So don't set yourself up for failure by misaligning your expectations, understanding what your market milestone is relative to your resources. So reverse engineer that funnel from the bottom up, and it'll help you quickly determine what that milestone is. Now that we have that, we can move on to, all right, what do we have to do to get there? So it starts with, and it unfolds like this. The structure is, you've got the phase on the left, you have the stage and the resources required. Those are all hyperlinked to documents so that you can track all this stuff. And then there's a goal, a focus, and an outcome, because goals by themselves are for losers. Systems are for winners. You can have a goal, but if you don't have a way to get to it that's systematic and repeatable and predictable, you're going to have a challenge. So we have a systematic approach to this. So goals, focus, and outcomes. So the first thing we do is market resource review and mapping. So market resource review and mapping is all is designed to understand what actual physical resources you have, as I just talked about with that anecdote. What people, processes, capital do you have to actually execute on this milestone that we talked about? And then we also want to know who else will you need, what roles, whether they're product roles or market roles, to support the execution of this market milestone effort. And then if you actually do hit it, what else are you going to need? And by when? And what are the trigger events associated with that? So that lets you plan in front, well ahead, about what you're going to need and when, because talent acquisition is not an overnight thing, right? It's going to take you a while to find the right people, line up the resources, or the right amount of capital. It always takes longer. It always costs more than you always think it does. Then what current sales process do you have? What are you doing to acquire customers today? How are you doing it? And then what tools are you using to track it? So we look at all of that with this whole idea of creating a roadmap of people, processes, and technologies necessary to support the first objective of MXP, which is create a functional learning organization. You have to get, part of the growth mindset is recognizing the quantifiable value of learning. The seed stage is for learning. The seed stage is not when you're going to go balls to the wall and crush it and accelerate yourself out of the atmosphere, off to Unicornville. It's to learn, okay? To learn about where you work well, where you don't, and where you should be spending your time, money, and resources. The biggest problem that we see with all of our companies, or any companies in startup land, is, I'm getting on my soapbox now, they misallocate the resources they have. They don't realize how quickly they can burn through $1 million. They don't realize how quickly one bad hire can kill them, not just culturally, but financially. So you have to walk in recognizing that. My partner started Match.com with $90,000 because no one would invest in a dating website in the 90s in the Bible Belt of Dallas, Texas. People would physically back away from him when he would talk to them about what he did. So he had to learn to bootstrap. I raised money twice, I didn't 3 times. So we understand this, right? Those of us that have done this, bootstrap things, mortgaged our house, pissed off our friends, whatever we've done. So recognizing that you have a limited amount of time, money, and resources to do this work is super important. So learning is the goal. So we want to resource map that. We want to have that roadmap, understand the sales process, what tools in your stack exist, and what talent's going to be required to do it. Once we've done that, and we've established what everybody's role and purpose is during this process, we now go into market discovery. It's, for me, the most interesting phase before launch. This is where we really get to learn about who your market is, where are they, what the heuristics and nature of those folks are, who you've been talking to, what they've been saying to you. So we immediately start at the bottom of your funnel and work our way up. Where have you won? Why did you win? What did they say about you? What did they think they were buying? What problem did they say you were solving? Because nobody cares about your product. They care about the problems you solve. We have to stop talking about our products and start talking about problems and take that perspective with us when we have conversations with our market. Sidebar. Then we create what are called ideal company profiles. And there might be a series of those, anywhere from 1 to N, depending on what we learn about your existing customer base. And again, you can do this with mature companies as well as immature companies. And then we prioritize those customer profiles based on where we hypothesize you're going to get the fastest path to traction. What's my highest likelihood of winning business in the shortest period of time possible with the highest revenue and the greatest learning opportunity. And focus your efforts there. Because having the knowledge and having the skills and even having this process, that's not going to change your behavior. It's up to you to change your behavior. And by that I mean, don't spend time on everybody who expresses interest in what you're doing. You need to be diligent and disciplined about talking to the right people. Not Mr. Right, but Mr. Right now. Who's the one that's going to help you the most today to get to that market milestone? Focus on them. There's only a couple of you. There's tens of thousands, hundreds of customers you can be talking to. You can't talk to them all. Focus on the ones that you can and stay laser focused there. That's where companies have a better opportunity at getting to the truth faster. Make sense? Okay. So then we want to understand, once we prioritize that, and we've said, all right, these are the customers we're going to go after in this order based on what we know. Now let's understand how easy it is to do business with us. So this is where we review the entire customer journey. And we map the whole thing out. From the first time you touch a customer or a prospective customer, what are the steps they take? What do they have to go through? How long does it take? We just did this with one of our enterprise class startups, and afterwards they looked at us and they said, our customers deserve a medal for trying to do business with us. We don't think about it, right? Conversion rate optimization begins and ends here. We took a 9-step process down to 5 steps, and we took it from 16 weeks to 6 weeks in about a 90-day stretch with this one particular company in our portfolio. Because you don't realize just how hard you make it on other people to do business with you. So evaluate that, understand it, try and drive as many user actions out as you can, and work your way through that. And if there's any wireframing, if this is a web-based product, it's a SaaS product, we're looking at all the wireframes, we're looking at the designs, we're looking at all the steps and the user flows. What are you charging? Pricing is hard. Let's just get to it. Everybody is frustrated with pricing. I get it. It's hard. Unless you're in a highly commoditized market where there's an established demand and an established set of criteria, which you really don't want to be in anyway, because that doesn't create differentiation. You have to learn. You have to develop pricing over time. You've got to test different things. You've got to look at your whole market. It takes a while. So be patient with that. But we want to understand how you're charging today and what your opportunities are to adjust that. Look at quick wins there. One quick pro tip there is just make sure that you're pricing to people and selling to them in a way that they're used to buying. By that I mean, do they even have a line item budget? A line item in their budget for the product or service that you're selling? Are you even calling it what they call it? Because if you don't, you're going to run into friction. So understand that, because budget only comes from one of 3 places. It has to be created, it has to be moved from somewhere else, or you have to replace an incumbent. And your number one competitor in any of these market development approaches, and just in the market in general, is not the incumbent. It's change. It's doing nothing. It's so much easier to do nothing than to change. So make sure you recognize that as well. Then we go into customer acquisition strategy. So now that we have a good idea who your customers are and where they are, and what you've done so far to acquire them to this point, we start to define your customer acquisition strategy. Is it touchless? Is it low touch inside sales? Is it high, medium touch, high touch? Is it field? Each one of those things impacts your cost to acquire a customer and the lifetime value, which is the second primary goal of MXP. The first one was create a functional learning organization. And the second one is get you to a repeatable, scalable CAC LTV ratio, a business model where you can actually make money. Then, understanding that customer acquisition strategy, we start to go in your data acquisition framework. So now that we know who your customers are and where they are, how do we find them? And how do we start the process of acquiring data that allows us to reach out to them in a way that gets us through this process quickly? So a goal here is to understand that current customer life cycle, to establish the foundation for customer retention and growth. We want to know who your current customers are first and how to keep them. It's cheaper to keep customers than it is to acquire new ones. And early customers you're always pissing them off anyway because your product doesn't work yet. 90% of what we take to the market is wrong. You know, we have a vision, but we actually never really execute on that vision early. It takes a while. Then we want to understand the current customer profiles, the lifetime value relative to that CAC LTV ratio. And then we want to understand and define the customer acquisition channels, the data acquisition, the pricing strategy, and get ourselves ready for market outreach, which is almost the next phase. So there's a little bit more color and detail into the focus areas there that we just talked about. And then the prioritized roadmap of your customer life cycles. Now that we know who they are, where they are, and how to find them, how do we talk to them? And most importantly, how do we talk to them in a way that doesn't sell to them, but seeks fit? Because let's go back to the beginning, right? We've constructed a hypothesis about who we think our ideal customer profile is. We think we've defined value as to why we think that is. We've gone through the effort of doing the research to find them, find out who inside those organizations we care about, and then begin this process of reaching out to them. So let's reach out to them in a way to validate our hypotheses, not to sell. Am I talking to Mr. Right for 2 years from now, or am I talking to Mr. Right now for the current market milestone? That's your qualification criteria. That's what you want to be thinking about. So in this phase, market messaging, it's where I see more people get stuck than anywhere else. They don't take enough time. They don't think through how to talk to customers in a way that gets them to say, ooh, that's interesting, tell me more. I'm willing to give you 15 minutes or 20 minutes, or I'm willing to have a conversation with you to understand how you might be helpful to me. That's the goal. Those are the opportunities. When you get real, unvarnished, honest market feedback. The challenge is creating an environment under which people will be honest with you. Today's marketplace, people don't like to be honest if there's conflict. They like honesty when it's nice, but they don't like it when it's not. So people will lie to you to spare your feelings. And they'll lead you down a path, and you'll spend 6 weeks or 6 months on a deal only to find out that there was no deal. So getting to that early, creating messaging that gets people excited about talking to you and being honest with you is critical, because you can waste a ton of time in this area. So the first thing that we do is we go out and conduct third-party customer interviews, and we have an entire framework for that. You're not allowed to do it. You're a founder, you're biased. We do it, or we have somebody else do it that can collect feedback in an important right way. And I think those of you who have ever dealt with surveys can attest to this. If you don't ask the questions in the right way, you're not going to get the data you want. So that's no small skill and effort unto itself. Then through the course of what we learn about why people bought from you, what they think they bought, what it's actually doing, what problems they think you're solving, what job they perform, the pain associated with it, the realized gain or potential gain that comes from that, we start building out documentation around unique value propositions and unique selling propositions. And there's a difference between those two. What's the difference, Sean? Glad you asked. A selling proposition tells me what you do. A value proposition tells me what you do for me. Big difference. Nobody cares what you do. They care what you do for them. So lead with that. Don't tell me that your quarter-inch drill bit is awesome and it can do all these things. Tell me that it puts the hole in the wall that lets me hang the picture that my wife asked me to hang. Happy wife, happy life. That's what it does for me. Now, it's taken me 20 years to learn how to do that myself and articulate that, which is even a greater challenge for your customers. Because especially at the user buyer level, they oftentimes don't know how to describe the value or articulate the value of what you bring. So you have to do it for them. So get clear on what you do for people, not on the features and the functionality, but on the benefits. Sure, you'll get that in sales in the selling prop. In the selling prop, you'll build out a grid that says this is how we compare to everything else that you're doing. These are the features. It's the how. The value proposition is the why. Start with the why, use that to generate attention, and then go into the how when they actually give you time to start asking you questions about that. But I see it all day long. The stuff, it just blows my mind. You get 9 paragraphs of shit before I actually understand what somebody does for me. Right? So we got to strip all that out. We got to get away from being product focused. We got to get into market focus, focus on the problem, not the product, and figure out how you solve that problem and tell that story. And if you tell that to the right people, you will get enough of them to react and respond. And if you create the right environment, you will get the truth from them. From 20 honest ideal customer profiles than blasting 2,000 with some product-focused nonsense. Let me show you my demo. Now, once we've done that, we build a market message map. The market message map takes every unique value proposition, every unique selling proposition, and maps it to every medium, channel, and format, whether it's a Facebook ad, whether it's a video, Google AdWords play, a cold email, a PowerPoint, a case study, a white paper, user stories, testimonials, whatever. So now you've got this map of message hypotheses that you can test across all the different channels that you want to test. We have 19 that we test. We don't always test all 19. I can look at a company and a channel and I can tell you probably that there's 2 or 3 that matter, just based on experience. But there's 19 that are available today, and that might change tomorrow. Who knows what the kids are up to these days. So we want to do that, and then what the outcome of that is to develop an initial messaging hypothesis to attract the relevant ideal customer profiles for each use case that we develop, and then that comprehensive market message map that aligns with that customer acquisition strategy. So now we're ready for outreach. No, we're not. We have to instrument first. Before we start reaching out to customers, you better be able to measure it and track it. If you can't, this is all for naught, because we won't know how we're doing. So make sure that you put the right marketing and sales automation tools in place to track everything that you're doing. And this applies, I know I'm making a lot of B2B references, but this applies to B2C as well. It's the same stuff. So make sure that you've got the right instrumentation in place and that you can track everything. And then you do testing in very small batches before you start going out at scale to rapidly iterate on the messages based on the responses that you receive from the marketplace. And it's okay to fuck this up. That's what growth mindset's all about. You're going to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying. This is about learning. Right? Here, I made this. I think I can help you. Here's how I think I can help you. I'd love to have that conversation. Let's have that conversation and understand if you actually do have the problem that I hypothesize you have, and then qualify this in a way that determines whether or not we want to continue to move forward and spend time together. That's it. Did I mention a single product or a market? No. It's a simple business conversation. We overcomplicate this stuff. So we want to keep it simpler. So we define our marketing and sales funnel. We build it out. We establish the stages. Again, we start with simple ones, just like the ones I showed you on the Market Milestone funnel. Everything's a funnel, by the way. You can create a funnel. You can reverse engineer yourself through execution on just about anything. I learned that in college from a tree. Just kidding. Then we want to validate our tracking. So we test it, and then we, from there, start the process of outreach. So depending on what channels you use, you build a campaign tracker that sits as a separate spreadsheet. It's a collaborative Google Sheet that we use with our companies. It doesn't have to be fancy, but at least it calls out all the channels, all the methods, the cadence, the scheduling, what goes where, links back to the market message map and all the assets. And now we have a way of starting to track the outreach so that we can start getting feedback. So I enjoy market discovery, but I really love this because I love talking to customers about their problems. So I love understanding job, pain, gain, right? How can I help somebody and how can I quantify that? And that's where you have to get. So once you get there and you actually create those campaigns and you execute them across each channel, now the fun begins. Now you actually have to figure out how to talk to humans. How do I have a conversation that gets both parties what they want? How do I do it efficiently, respectfully, and effectively? Last year I did the main stage, the art and science of closing deals, because that's what Lloyd asked me to do. And I think he did it just to mess with me because he knows I hate closing. I just think, I think it's in my sales graveyard as a tombstone. Closing is a byproduct of being fully immersed in helping people get what they want. It's not a tactic. It's not a manipulation. It's not a tool. It's not a trick, right? It's just a byproduct of helping people get what they want. So the art and science of the conversation is critical. And in today's marketplace, we've never been more interconnected, but we've also never been more interpersonal, I think. Staring at screens all day. So how do you have a conversation with people that's really efficient and focused and effective? So we create a conversational framework that's a live conversational structure that's designed to do one thing, what this whole thing is to do. Get to the truth. Can I help you? I'd love to know if I can. Let's have a conversation. I'll be quick, respectful. What are you doing today? How are you doing it? Can I help you? So we use a framework called the SPIN interview framework. Dr. Neil Rackham wrote a book 35 years ago. I know it was a long time ago, but human behavior doesn't change. Technology, yeah, but human behavior is still the same. So it's driven on data. They've monitored over 10 years, 30,000 sales conversations, and they developed a pattern, they recognized a pattern on how people buy, the decision-making process that they go through, and that the most important part of that decision-making process is you have to recognize a need. You recognize a need, you evaluate your options, you resolve your concerns, and then you make a decision. It's a 4-step process. Everybody in here does it every day. You know you do it. But that's what it's called. You recognize a need, you evaluate an option, you resolve your concerns, and then you make a decision. And then every future decision is informed by the previous ones. And that addresses how you recognize a need, how you evaluate options, and how you resolve concerns down the road. What they also learned from this process was the number one thing that separates great sales organizations from not great ones is how much time they spend on needs recognition. Because the data showed that if somebody doesn't recognize a need, sure, they might evaluate options, sure, they might have a conversation with you about their concerns, but they aren't making a decision. How many of us have gone through situations where we spent 6 months on a deal? You had an 85% probability to close, and then it goes dark, and you don't know why. Well, that's why. The need wasn't there. So if you spend your time early and often on needs development and needs recognition, you will learn whether or not somebody actually does in fact have a need and whether or not it's worth pursuing. And the best sales organizations spend 80% of the sale on needs recognition and 20% on the other 3 steps. Because if you get the needs recognition, everything else goes, as I've said, as a byproduct. So it's super important to develop that the right way and then add the BANT qualification to it. I can't read that. I'm blind as a bat. Cool. Okay. The BANT qualification stands for budget, authority, need, and timing. People may have the willingness to do business with you, but do they have the ability? And you have to assess for that. And then you have to be ruthless in how you qualify them to make sure that you're spending time on the right people right now. Then we develop an opportunity framework that looks at the friction points in the funnel. What else do we need to give these people so that they will move forward? And we start to develop that, and we start to iterate on the funnel stages. And then we move into pipeline management. Depending on the sales cycle, that can be a daily, weekly, or bi-weekly, or bi-monthly. I never get the bi-monthly or bi-weekly thing. Twice a week, or is it? Anyway. Yeah, it makes me crazy every time I say it. But then we get into pipeline management and we start working towards real business that's tied to those market milestones that we create. And then we want a portfolio of all the marketing and sales assets required to make it easy for people to do business with us. We want to understand the funnel. We want to revise the conversation and opportunity framework. And we want a closed feedback loop for learning. You're representing the product in the market. You've got to take that stuff back to your engineering team, back to your product team. You have to represent your company. That's your role as a market developer. You have to know how to talk to humans in the market and engineers in your company. Not to imply that they're not human. Okay? And then ultimately, it comes down to results. So this is the part where people always go to me, why do these all say NA? You have documents for everything else. Well, because everything else is a known. These are not knowns yet. I have no idea what the market's going to say, bless you, about your product, about the market, about the sales cycle, the feedback, whether you should pivot. I have no idea. We won't know until we start talking to the market. And that's the whole purpose, is to generate a response. Everything you do in market development leading up to the point to where people respond to you should be designed to do just that. Generate a response. Okay? Get an honest response from the market. Then we measure that response, we track it, we validate and document all this stuff. We build out a talent acquisition framework that says, here's all the people you're going to need, here's your market acceleration playbook, here's the manual you need for growth. Make sure your behaviors align with your newfound knowledge and skills. Okay? So, the ultimate outcomes, optimize messaging, outreach, and conversion methods based on measured and analyzed market response. It sounds cooler when I write it than when I say it. It's pretty dry. Validated and documented hypothesis covering the market development cycle, a comprehensive recruitment, marketing, employment branding, and then all the documentation forthwith. I'm done. My favorite movie growing up, true story. Absolutely love Bob.
I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.